Hey, Fly Girl. I'm René Vengelsdorf, aviation CEO, FAA board alum, and high performance coach. Whether you're chasing your first discovery flight or leading at 40,000 feet, this show is your runway for bold career moves, real mentorship, and stories from women rewriting their flight plan. From the cockpit to the control tower, we're building the future of aviation one fly girl at a time. Welcome to the Fly Girls Guide podcast. Hello. Oh my gosh. I am so excited for today's guest on the Fly Girls Guide to Aviation Careers podcast. Maddie Glassett is young, she is vibrant, and she is just full of positive energy about her job. Maddie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh my goodness, thank you for the kind words. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, you have done a number of things already in your career in aviation. You've become an A&P mechanic. You're currently a flight instructor, and we're going to talk about that today, about teaching other people how to fly.
Yeah, it's one of my most favorite things. I feel so privileged to get to do that.
Awesome. Well, what does that mean on a day-to-day basis? Like, what do your job responsibilities look like?
I'm responsible at my current school for teaching anyone from their private to their instrument commercial. I've done some CFI stuff. So pretty much any rating, well, except MEI that you could want to get, um, I can teach you. Um, I do a lot of that right now in Piper Warriors, a little bit of 172. I also get to instruct in a seaplane, which is really fun. I teach in the Icon A5. So that's cool. But I actually just took a new role. I'm going to be transitioning and starting to teach in Cirrus and potentially Huskies. So I'm super excited about growing myself as a flight instructor and kind of putting myself back in the learning seat.
I love it. Well, you're always learning as a pilot.
Always,
Never,
always.
you never know it all.
Yeah, yes.
And as soon as you know an aircraft really well, then most pilots will move to another aircraft to hone their skills and really improve their flying techniques. So I love it that you do that. Tell me what, if I'm going to become a pilot, tell me what, like what you do. Like, give me the ins and outs of what you do to teach me or someone else how to be a pilot.
Sure. So starting with like just the private level, which is what you're going to start out with, I like to break it down into three kind of basic steps. So first you've got like the pre-solo phase, right? And that's where you're learning how to fly the plane, all in preparation for your first solo flight. I like to tell people it's a little different than getting your permit to drive, right? Your permit allows you to drive a car with somebody in the plane, or sorry, with somebody in the car, and your student pilot license allows you to solo the plane without anybody in it, without no instructor. So it's kind of the opposite of learning how to drive. And so then once you solo, you kind of move on to your cross country and solo time building phase. So we're going to be going to different airports further away, and then you're going to be soloing the plane. You need 10 hours of solo for your private pilot license. And then once you kind of finish that part of your training, we move on to the checkride prep. And that's, making sure you've got these maneuvers down. You can do a nav log and follow it and get from one airport to another safely, and just prepare you to take your exam.
Yeah. So there are a lot of terrifying things in there. I got my private pilot's license not too long ago, so I'm going to throw a couple of things in there that were particularly challenging to me that I know that you get to teach people how to do. And one thing that you would be exceptional at is teaching the systems. So if you're in a carbureted airplane, you have to know how carb heat works, and you have to know how the engine works, and you have to understand all the electrical systems and be able to explain those and troubleshoot them in the air sometimes. And so that's one aspect of it. Like, you're giving people a ton of technical training. Um, and then I know also you were talking about doing some cross country. Well, there's not only are you learning how to spot airports, but you're learning how to talk to air traffic control and Talk about some of the things that you find that are particularly rewarding where you're like, yes, they got it. When one of your students really understands something, or is it different with every student?
I would say generally most people have the same like highs and lows. Like I can almost always tell you people are going to struggle with the short field and soft field landings when it comes to the check ride. I think one of the most rewarding things to teach is like that pre-solo phase, right, where you're going to another airport, right? There's a lot of things you have to remember. You need to remember to, plug it in before you even leave the ground. Once you get up to altitude, you got to remember to do your cruise checklist. And then, one of the things people always forget is like to plan their descent. Think about how they're going to enter the traffic pattern at the new airport. It's just a lot going on, right? And so, yeah, I know when one of my students ready to solo is when I can just sit there and they can go airport to airport and they're running all their checklists when they should. They're thinking ahead. They're planning, what they're going to do at this moment in time, and they're at ease doing that, right? And that's I find that a much harder component of the solo than per se like the landings. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I enjoy watching. I enjoy just sitting there, right, and just letting them fly the plane because that's how you know, like, okay, you got it, like let's do it. Um, of course, the solo is rewarding. I love making the shirt tails for them. Um, yeah, it's fun.
So one of the things that I think that maybe you probably didn't anticipate when you were thinking about becoming a flight instructor is the counseling that you have to do as a flight instructor. I mean, obviously, you have to have a tremendous amount of technical knowledge. You have to have a really good understanding of the aircraft. You have to learn how to teach if you didn't already know how to do that. And you're doing ground school and you're doing oral exam prep and you're doing like the physical training. So it's very dimensional training. It's not lecturing at the front of a classroom. But then
Yeah.
you also have to be able to get into the person's head and really coach them through what's holding them back, whether it's mindset or um, something else. Tell me a little bit about how you learned to do that well.
Well, I like to think I can do it well. I don't know if that's totally true. Um, but yeah, it is. You're right. It is not just a lecture, right? You can be a basic CFI and you can treat it as just a lecture, right? And do the bare minimum. I was super fortunate to have instructors who connected with me on a personal level and who made me feel like I was their favorite student. I'm sure I wasn't, but
Might have
just
been.
just just the fact that they cared, right? Like, and that I guess they didn't have to, but they did. They could have gotten away doing the bare minimum, and so I had great examples going into it, which made it super easy. It they my when my instructor soloed me, he took me to get barbecue right after at the Lockhart Airport. And so that is a tradition that wasn't even a question, like if I should, continue with my students. Um, and so, yeah, I get to know them. Like I genuinely am friends with all of my students. I had one text me on vacation the other day because he was watching birds land and thought it was super interesting, So I'm glad they feel comfortable enough to reach out to me for, little tiny things like that. Um, but you do have to adjust to the different types of students, right? And I have students from high school to like I think I instructed somebody and gave a checkout flight to somebody who was in their 80s the other day. So you know, at the end of the day, everybody loves aviation, right? And that's a unifying kind of force that you can fall back to. But don't be afraid to make your students your friends because we're in a really cool career or job that we can we can do that.
I love that. Well, that begs the question, what happens when you have to fail someone? Because that happens, right? You have to tell people, hey, you're you're not cut out for flying. Sometimes you have to tell them, hey, you're not ready for your check ride, or you're not ready to solo yet, even though you think that you are. Here are the things that I'm seeing that make me feel like you're not safe. So how do you give bad news? What does that feel like? And how challenging is that in your job?
Sure. Yeah, it's very challenging. It's definitely the least fun part of it. I had to do it yesterday. Um, First of all, I'll never tell anybody that they're not cut out for flying because I firmly believe you can do whatever you put your mind to. But I absolutely believe that there are some people who come to it more naturally than others, right? That's with anything, right? Some people have strong suits. So I have had to tell people like, hey, like I think it's gonna take more than, the usual hours, right? And I think being honest and upfront with them is important because they need to know they're gonna spend probably a lot more money doing it that way. But at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of people who I tell that to still pursue it. They appreciate the honesty and they're like, okay, I want to do it anyways. As far as like telling people, hey, that you did not pass that mock check ride, or I'm not ready to solo you like I said I was. Um, I always try to take some ownership in that too, because I'm half of the problem, or the problem, right?
Delay, maybe.
So I guess the biggest thing is like if you're telling them, make sure that you're also learning yourself as an instructor and evaluating, okay, what could I have done better to not put them in this situation? In addition to the things they could have done too. It's a two-way street.
Wow. That I guess leads me to a question like, what qualities do you think? And I know this is going to make you uncomfortable, but I'm going to ask it anyway, Maddie. What qualities do you think that you have that make you a really good instructor?
Well, I am super passionate about instructing. This is not a time building job for me. Like, and I mean that. I love
I
it.
know you mean that. Yeah,
I love it.
you told me at lunch yesterday that you had two job opportunities. One was to become a demo pilot for a manufacturer, and one was to go become a general manager of a location of a school so that you could still be doing flight instruction. And you chose the flight instruction job, which is what makes you perfect for this.
Yeah, no, I don't know about like general manager, but yeah, I chose the flight instruction route because I love it, and it's so funny because I didn't think I was gonna do the whole flight instruction route. I was like, I'm gonna try to see if I can bypass it, and here I am, a year and a half in, and well, I want more years. If I can make a career out of it, I can and I will. So yeah, you have to be passionate about flight instruction. Um, you got to be honest. You can't um, beat around the middle. Like you have to have the hard conversation sometimes. You have to be willing to make flight instruction fun, right? I've always, um, it's not, to me, it's never just been, okay, look, just to get my private, right? Like it's a journey, right? Like there's so many fun things you can do with it and you can experience through flight instruction. It doesn't have to just be training flight after training flight after training flight, right? So, having the mentality as an instructor, like, hey, let's go do this for fun, or like, hey, let's stop at this new airport, right? Or like, hey, try to put it on the numbers here. Um, that's a that's a mentality that I think can sometimes get lost in the hustle and bustle of being a flight instructor. So
I love that. So passion, fun, and honesty. Um, I'm going to throw one in here, and I know you're switching to an airplane that has air conditioning, but you have to have quite a tolerance for the heat doing flight instructing in Texas in the summer because it gets hot behind those engines.
oh my goodness, Renee, I so this is my second summer flight instructing in Texas, and I do not have it in me anymore to do 4 flights a day. I don't know how I did that last summer. Whew. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. But the good thing about being an instructor in Warriors is that you get the door. So at least I have the airflow there. My poor students though, they're over there baking. So
It's hot, but they're not doing 4 flights a day, most of them.
True, true. Yeah.
Yes. What do you think is the most challenging thing about being an instructor?
Um, honestly, the students that you get from the get-go, the ones that you get to do their discovery flight with, their first lesson, all the way through their check ride, those are, I don't want to say they're easy, but they're yours, right? You have put your time and effort, you have molded them into this perfect little model pilot of what you think is perfect, right? But that's maybe been 10% of my students, 15%. A lot of times you're working with people who started with somebody else and then transitioned to you, or people who started 20 years ago and now are picking it back up. Or, we have lots of students at our school that we encourage to work with multiple instructors so that you can learn different things from different instructors, right? Um, and while that's like great, and I totally believe that, it's a challenge to take something that somebody else has molded into this pilot, right? And then work with them and not, you don't want to backtrack them. You don't want to take any more of their time and flight hours and money than you need to. Um, but you also, everybody has their own, kind of personal standards of like, yeah, I want to see this. Like, I think you should be able to do this. So finding a balance between working with students who you didn't get from day one, I find that to be um, a challenge.
What's the scariest moment that you've had as a flight instructor?
Okay, full confession time. It was my first time, or one of my very first time teaching emergency procedures to a student. And so I simulate engine out, so I pull the throttle back, and he's running through the checklist, right? And he gets to the cutoff portion, and he's like, okay, mixture, idle cutoff, and he reaches for that mixture, and he totally like pulls it out, which it's not his fault. I didn't tell him that we were just simulating these things. Now, I did have a little self reflection moment. I was like, okay, maybe you need to emphasize the power of this red knob further, closer to the beginning of their training.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that'll give you a heart attack.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. What's been what's been one thing that you've been particularly proud of that you've accomplished or that you've done?
Hmm. Do you want to stay in the flight instruction realm or can I go elsewhere?
No, talk about whatever you want to. It's
Okay.
your podcast.
um, I'm pretty proud of the University Flying Club. So I went to the University of Texas. I majored in aerospace engineering there. And while I was there, I restarted the University Flying Club. It's existed since the 60s, but it kind of took a hiatus in like 2015 because there were just no pilots at UT because there's no aviation program there. Um, so I, had done a lot of research on the club. It was just a dormant Facebook page. Um, and then after I got my private, that kind of gave me the confidence to restart the club. It's still going today. They have, several members. They still do flyouts. They still um, make T-shirts. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
That's great. Did it enable you to meet and begin to network with people, the alumni in the
Oh,
university?
oh yeah, yeah. So the whole point of the club is just to basically have like a place for aviation enthusiasts and Longhorn enthusiasts, right? And then also to enable like college students to fly on a college budget. So yeah, it was cool. I've definitely connected with some of the older members of the club, which has been cool.
I love it. I want to talk a little bit about being a newer generation aviator in an industry that has a lot of people who are older, who've been doing it for a long time. Is it more intimidating or more encouraging?
I'm an old soul, so I get along uh, with the older generation for sure. So I don't find it intimidating at all. Um, in fact, I have found nothing but welcome arms and them embracing me. So I we even joke at my at my flight school right now that I have a type, and it is the the older gentleman. Um, we just gravitate toward each other, and a lot of times they end up being my student. So yeah, I love it.
I love it. Well, you're teaching some hobby aviators, you're teaching some people who are intending to make this a career, and
Mm.
then you got pulled in to teaching in float planes, to teaching seaplane ratings. So, and I found this out recently, when you're an instructor already and you get your seaplane rating, you actually automatically can instruct in seaplanes. So you started some seaplane instruction without a ton of hours in seaplanes. And I want to hear about that. Like, what was that adventure like?
Sure, yeah, it was. I'm super lucky and just wound up with this job. So yeah, I've been teaching in an Icon A5, so I haven't done any float time, just hull seaplane time. But yeah, at around 20 hours is when I started instructing in them. Um, and honestly, Renee, I it wasn't even something I thought about when it was happening. You know, it's something I've reflected on in now back, and I'm like, oh yeah, I started instructing at 20 hours. Um, but here I am, and it it's a different type of instructing, right? Because you're not teaching new private students, which is the majority, of my instruction, what it has been. Um, but you're teaching people who want to do this because they really want to do it, right? So the motivation and the passion is even more so than when you're teaching, private or instrument stuff. So it was fun. I didn't, I guess once you learn the skills, right? You just I already had several hundred hours of dual given, so that was nice. But you just kind of transfer the that all the skills you learned instructing there, and just teach a few different maneuvers, a few different landings and techniques. So
Yeah, it's not horribly different. It just causes you to pay more attention to your stick and rudder skills.
oh, absolutely, yes, very grateful for that.
Yeah. And you had a little bit of tailwheel time before you started that too, right?
Just a little bit, but the majority of it I've gotten after. And if there's any piece of advice I could give to anybody, it'd be go get your tail wheel as soon as you can. That is the most seaplane and tail wheel are pretty darn close. But tail is usually a little bit easier to do. So go get your tail wheel as soon as you can. It's gonna make you a better pilot. It's so much fun. It's just a new challenge. It's nice after 1,000 hours in Warriors to just change it up.
I love it. Well, if you were going to give advice to someone who is an instructor right now and is trying to decide what to do next, what would you advise them to explore?
To explore. Well, I would say if you really love instructing, there are a few paths to continue that. They're hard to find, trust me. I know I've been looking, but they are out there, and I think more and more are becoming available, so that we don't just have to view instructing as this, time building job and stepping stone kind of position. But of course, after that, there's the airlines, there's 135, there's 91 ops. I think it really just depends on um, what kind of flying you want to do. Do you want to do you want to fly, get the satisfaction of flying hundreds of people across the country to help them, get to what they need to be and do at? Do you want to do some smaller missions? Do you want to help a company build their business by flying, their employees all over? It's a personal decision.
I love it. Maddie, thanks so much for sharing with us about being a CFI today. Do you have a mantra you live by or like a piece of advice that you always tell people?
It's not mine, so I can't take credit. But I remember watching this video that Southwest Airlines put out. It was about Tammy Jo Schultz, She was the captain of the Flight 1380 that had the engine failure, and she landed it safely. And in her video, she talks about like two things that she learned from the accident and two things that she takes with her everywhere she goes now. And one is that your your habits become your instincts, and especially in times of like trial. So guard your habits, right? Those are important. Don't get lazy. This is, I think, extremely important to like the CFIs out there, because it's easy when you're doing the same thing over and over again. But guard your habits; they're important. And then also hope. Like she says, that hope doesn't always change our circumstances, but it always changes us. And I, as an optimist, I love that, because why look at it any differently?
I cannot think of a better way to end our podcast. Maddie, thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
that.
thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. This was fun.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. For additional resources, head over to flygirlsguide.com. If you're inspired to pursue a path in aviation or want to support the women who do, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if today's conversation sparked something for you, share it with a friend. It's one of the best ways to grow the Fly Girls Guide community. Until next time.